The word lunatism is often used in such a mundane context as such a term, a bit overused. I'm walking around like a lunatic due to lack of sleep. But in reality, lunatism is a quite serious condition that can have quite obvious and unpleasant consequences. Today I will tell you what lunatism is, what forms of lunatism exist. In children and adults, these are often different conditions. And how to coexist with it or fight it. Watch this video to the end and I'll tell you if it's dangerous to be a lunatic, if you met him somewhere in the corridor, and can you ask a person in a dream if he has sleep talking. What is lunacy? From a medical perspective, these two states are two sides of the same coin. These are sleepwalking and sleep talking, and sleep talking, as a rule, is more common when a person can wake up, say something, mumble, well, that is somehow talk in bed. Sleepwalking is when a person really gets up and goes somewhere and may even do something there. As I said, childhood sleepwalking and adult are somewhat different and sometimes completely different conditions. Let's start, of course, with the children. Often this condition arises somewhere already, maybe from 3 to 4 years old, and usually peaks at 6 to 7 years old. And as a rule, if the parents of this child walked or talked themselves in childhood, then this can be passed on by inheritance. Among other things, this is quite a favorable situation. As a rule, this does not carry any physical or mental development problems for a person. But there are a few such precautions or even dangers. First, if a child walks in his sleep, it's a potentially traumatic situation. They say sleepwalkers can go out, walk on roofs, and generally not fall. They fall. They fall off stairs and they fall out of windows. These cases are usually described periodically. Therefore, it is necessary to create a safe environment where the child sleeps. He can't sleep, for instance, on the second tier of the bed. In a children's room with 2 kids, there are sometimes bunk beds, because a child can really fall and get injured. In the bedroom, you need to remove sharp or any glass objects, so that if a child falls, they can hurt themselves on these objects. If a child can leave the room and they live somewhere on the second floor and there's a staircase down, you definitely need to install special gates and close them so that the child can't go, because they often stumble, fall down the steps, and also get quite serious injuries. And of course, there should be special locks on the windows, and a child can really open the window and fall out of it. What else can there be? Well, this is already some kind of psychological problem. For example, if a child goes to kindergarten, there are some extended groups where he can sleep and he has sleepwalking, sleep talking, or he goes to some camp, then this can cause such psychological discomfort. Well, because some, so to speak, surroundings can, as this modern word is, hate this child well or laugh at him. And in this sense, having consulted with doctors, you can give drugs that will somewhat reduce the likelihood of developing sleepwalking, but these drugs themselves are not very simple, so you can't use them on your own, and moreover, they sometimes cause dependence and habituation. So it's better to be patient to some extent and try, even if in the collective of children, to explain to those around that you just, if possible, relate to this with understanding and do not offend this little child. But usually the situation goes somewhere to the puberty period, the period of sexual maturation, and first there is sleepwalking and then sleep talking. And sleep talking may still remain in adulthood.
How common is sleepwalking in principle?
In children, it's somewhere around 10% of children who walk and talk in their sleep. Well, they talk more often. As for adults, 1-3% still have sleepwalking and sleep talking from their childhood. Although, as I said, I will later talk about the sudden onset of sleepwalking in older age groups. This is a separate major problem. If you had sleepwalking in your children or some relatives walk or talk in their sleep, give this video a like. Adults may have several other problems. And above all, they are also associated with certain socializations of a person, and you know such a good expression that it doesn't matter what a person says in bed. The main thing is what and whose he speaks well, and such a continuation, one name during the day, and you are married, and another name at night, and you are in a divorce. That is, a person in general can blurt out something to some extent there, and if the surroundings do not take it very adequately, it can end up with some scandals or even divorces. That is, a person can really blurt out something in a dream, and in general, it can somehow psychologically harm a neighbor. Well, a neighbor should understand that even if a person talks in a dream, it doesn't mean that he really thinks so. And in this sense, my recommendation to you is that if you have sleepwalking or sleep talking, you should immediately warn your partner. And you can even do it with a little humor, like, I might blabber, so you should just take it with the necessary understanding and humor. And then, as they say, forewarned is forearmed. What really causes a problem, for example, is that it prevents a person from entering certain special services. Imagine an undercover person who starts talking in their sleep, revealing secrets. Special services don't accept patients known to talk in their sleep for this reason. So there is such a problem here, such a limitation on professions, if I may say so. But in general, again, adults as a rule do nothing with sleepwalking, at least with sleep talking. And if sleepwalking persists, again, you need to try to ensure maximum safety in the bedroom, close the same windows because the person himself should do this consciously. Hardly, so to speak, mom and dad will do it for him when he lives separately, but to protect himself so as not to fall out of the window, not to fall down the stairs and so on and so forth. And in this sense, even if you lock your room with a key, you just take it out of the lock and put this key somewhere in a separate place, preferably in different places, so that if you always put it in one and the same place, in the end, a person can even remember in a dream where he put the key, open the door, and go somewhere out into the street. And there are cases described when a person goes out, walks down the street, even gets into a car and can go somewhere. But the thing is that with sleepwalking, quick reflexes are absent. By the way, sleepwalkers in this sense are such unsafe people. They do everything slowly. They can't harm anyone, they can't hit anyone because they lack what are called quick reflexes. And even if a person got into a car and drove somewhere, at most he would get to the first turn or pole because he wouldn't be able to brake quickly or turn the wheel quickly. He will do it slowly. So, some kind of such troubles, they are also possible, but they end quite quickly anyway.
Roman, I immediately remember in cartoons they often show if someone is sleepwalking, he can walk along a very thin edge of a roof or along some thin branch and not fall. Is this really possible?
Unfortunately, these are fairy tales, but they are not fairy tales in the sense that the sleepwalker lacks criticism and he can really go. Imagine a very narrow strip with a gap in it. Well, if you, in principle, did not stumble and keep balance, and you are not afraid, you might pass normally, or you can stumble and fall. A reasonable person will be afraid, stumble, and definitely fall. Sometimes the lack of criticism can help navigate dangerous situations, but it's generally better to avoid them altogether. What else, by the way, provokes snow blindness and snow madness? It's stress, both in children and in adults. If there are any stressful situations, then potentially this can exacerbate the fact that a person starts to talk about something in bed or even walk. Sometimes even children who used to sleepwalk and then it all passed. In some adult situation, there is a stressful situation and a person has a return of sleepwalking and talking in sleep. Therefore, managing stress is extremely crucial. And stress also causes insomnia. Well, and another quite alarming, I would even say dangerous situation when a person suddenly, especially in older age groups, 50, 60, 70 years old, a person suddenly starts walking and talking in their sleep. And it grows quite quickly. This can indicate that a person is beginning to develop dementia, Alzheimer's disease, or even, let's say, degenerative or tumorous processes in the brain. In this situation, it is necessary to consult a neurologist, undergo a thorough examination, and try to understand what caused such a sudden onset of sleepwalking and sleep talking. Well, and maybe it's also important to distinguish, this is more of a medical aspect. Well, I think that maybe people, again, of older age groups encounter this when a person not just talks and just walks somewhere, but starts to scream, sometimes even fights with a neighbor in bed. Moreover, quick reflexes are preserved there. A person can act quickly. The text also describes instances of killing bed partners, among other things. Well, let's say some special forces soldier, he dreams that he starts fighting there with some enemies, and next to him is his delicate wife, right? But this is not sleepwalking. This is not sleep-talking sleepwalking. This is a separate disease, so-called rapid eye movement sleep behavior disorder. When a person is sleeping and seeing dreams, a neurochemical block occurs in him. That is, the brain is actively working, but the body cannot move. And therefore, essentially, this is not sleepwalking. But when this block is disrupted and the brain gives the command to the body to move, and this command passes, a person begins to act in accordance with the plot of his dream. He can do this quickly, as I mentioned. Swearing, fighting, running away, chasing. This too, by the way, is usually evidence of some degenerative processes in the brain. This is often the onset of dementia or Alzheimer's disease. And again, this is a situation that requires thorough examination and treatment by neurologists. And as I promised you, I'll tell you what to do if you meet a lunatic. Excuse me, you went to the toilet and someone is coming to meet you there. Such slightly glassy eyes, even though they are open. That is, the person sees he can avoid objects but does not realize, so to speak, that he is sleeping. Part of the brain is active, issuing commands, while the main part is asleep, and the person doesn't realize they are sleeping. In this situation, there is no need to wake up, especially when it's children. Imagine a child walking alone, talking to himself, unaware of his surroundings, when suddenly adults run up to him, shaking him and asking where he went. And here the brain wakes up, the remaining part of the brain, the rest, right? Mm-hmm. The child becomes frightened, finding himself in an unfamiliar place surrounded by scared people, sometimes not even recognizing his own parents who are demanding something from him. This is then stored in the child's memory, and he develops psychological stress. That's why it's important to just gently turn the person around, quietly take them to their room, put them to bed. Pat the little one on the head, he'll fall asleep and wake up in the morning not remembering anything, becoming a wonderful, sweet creature. And it's even better not to tell the child about this at all, so that he himself, and I'll say, now such literate children at 10 and 11 years old can already go on the internet to read about lunacy, and then worry about the fact that they are somehow inadequate. It's best not to mention this. As for talking in a dream, well, let's say a person started to talk about something in a dream, and some kind of suspicious thing there. The bed partner says, so, where have you been? Who have you met? Who do you love? Such a question in a dream. But here the person himself can blurt out something. But as soon as he is asked a question, the brain begins to strain. To analyze the speech addressed to him, a person can, so to speak, react to this. And here it wakes up. That is, as a rule, it is impossible to arrange a follow-up question. Therefore, this can be a plus for those who talk in their sleep, that yes, you yourself may blurt out something, but just so, you won't be able to be questioned in detail because you will wake up. Well, and this can be a kind of plus after all, that you can keep some secrets. Subscribe to my channel. There are many interesting videos about how to sleep properly, how to get rid of insomnia, how to fight snoring. In general, there is a lot of useful information about sleep. And click on the bell so you don't miss my newest and most interesting videos.